I still remember the sound of metal snapping that morning and the sharp clink of my garage lock being cut open. At first, I thought it was a burglar, but when I ran outside, still half-dressed and barefoot, it wasn't some thief under the cover of darkness. It was Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, standing smugly beside my Jeep, clipboard in one hand, bolt cutters in the other. "Ma'am, that's private property," I shouted. She barely flinched, tilting her head with that condescending smirk I'd seen too many times before. "This vehicle is in violation of HOA policy," she said, waving her papers like a royal decree. "You can't park junk cars in your driveway." Junk car. My jaw clenched. That junk car was a matte black 2017 Jeep Rubicon, A, modified and armored for undercover operations. What Karen didn't know was that it wasn't just my Jeep and was property of the local police task force, currently being used in an ongoing operation. But she didn't care. She had already called a tow truck, and the driver looked nervous, clearly unsure if he was supposed to follow through. I stepped between him and the Jeep. "You touch this vehicle, and you'll be in more trouble than you can imagine." Karen scoffed. "Oh please, don't threaten me. I know the law." If irony could hit like a hammer, that would have been the moment. I moved into the neighborhood about a year earlier. I was a former Marine turned police mechanic and part-time undercover consultant for the city's organized crime task force. The Jeep had been modified with surveillance tech, disguised cameras, reinforced panels, even a tracking jammer system, everything to blend into civilian life while staying mission ready. But the HO didn't like it. To them, it looked military, menacing, and unfit for a suburban community. Karen had complained about it since day one, filing reports, snapping photos, even trying to find me. I ignored her. I figured she'd eventually move on. She didn't. The day before the incident, I'd been up all night working with the task force. We were tracing a stolen vehicle ring operating out of nearby garages. The Jeep was central to our investigation, loaded with data we hadn't yet downloaded. I got home just before dawn and parked it in my driveway, exhausted. And just hours later, there she was, cutting my lock open. By the time I called dispatch, the Jeep was already on the tow truck. The operator promised to send an officer immediately, but Karen was already waving the driver to peel off. "This is HO property jurisdiction," she snapped. I ran after them, shouting, but the truck turned the corner and disappeared. My heart dropped. An hour later, two unmarked police SUVs rolled into the neighborhood. Detective Howard, my commanding officer, stepped out, face red as a cherry tomato. "Where's the Jeep, Mike?" "Karen took it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Karen who?" he barked. "The HO president." His eyebrows shot up. "You're telling me some HO president stole a federal task force vehicle?" "Pretty much." He muttered a curse and grabbed his phone. Within minutes, the situation turned from neighborhood drama to full-scale investigation. Officers surrounded the HO office, where Karen had proudly parked the Jeep as evidence of community violation. She even had flyers printed out, calling it an abandoned military vehicle. But what she didn't realize was that the moment she'd cut that lock, she'd committed federal property damage, and when she'd opened the Jeep store, she'd tampered with classified equipment. I'll never forget her face when the task force arrived, 4 black SUVs, badges flashing, and Detective Howard leading the charge. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle," he said firmly. Karen crossed her arms. "I don't answer to you. This is an HO matter." Howard smirked. "Ma'am, this vehicle belongs to the state police organized crime task force. You just interfered with an active investigation." Her confidence shattered instantly. "The what?" He nodded toward the Jeep. "You're under investigation for obstruction and unlawful seizure of government property." She turned pale. But I didn't know." It looked suspicious." Howard looked at me, then back at her. "You're right about one thing. It's suspicious that someone would break into a locked garage, destroy private property, and tow off a police vehicle." Karen started crying. "I was just doing my job." "Your job," he said dryly, "is to manage landscaping and noise complaints, not interfere with federal operations." In the end, Karen avoided jail barely. The task force chose not to press criminal charges, but she was removed from the whole board immediately. The tow company filed damages against her personally, and she was forced to pay over $12,000 in fines and restitution for the lock, the Jeep, and the tech she tampered with. I thought that would be the end of it, but the story went viral. News crews showed up the next day, cameras flashing, neighbors whispering. The headline read, "Greater than Hope President Seizes Police Vehicle, Ends Up in Federal Hot Water." Within 2 weeks, the whole completely restructured. The new board reached out to me personally to apologize, and they even implemented new policies: no vehicle judgments without verification, no property entry without permission. Months later, I stood by my driveway, polishing the Jeep, now with a small sticker on the bumper that read, "Karen Proof." My neighbor, Sam, chuckled as he walked by. "You really showed her, huh?" I smiled faintly. "I didn't have to." "She showed herself," he laughed. "Still, you handled it better than most people would have." I shrugged. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's the truth catching up with people. That experience taught me something powerful, something I think everyone needs to hear. We live in a world where some people think rules give them power, but real power doesn't come from control. It comes from respect, from doing what's right, even when nobody's watching. Karen thought she was above the law, but that day, she learned what happens when arrogance meets justice. And me, I didn't just get my Jeep back, I got peace of mind knowing that sometimes, patience and truth are the sharpest tools you'll ever need. Because in the end, justice doesn't roar. It rolls in quietly, like a black Jeep, idling at the curb, ready for the next mission.